I'm not going to start with any easy questions.
What would you do if you couldn't fail?
I was vulnerable in the sense that I was just who I was.
In my journey as an entrepreneur, I really found who I am as a human.
I was much more emotionally available to everyone because I was much more balanced.
Finding the grace and the humor in the balance of it all.
Whatever happens in the gut happens in the brain, and whatever happens in the brain happens in the gut.
Do you have a specific morning routine?
I was able to sort of reset my nervous system by getting involved with the cold.
Allow ourselves to have imperfection.
Absolutely had mentors, absolutely 100% had coaches.
A wake-up call to me that I could not try to be something I'm not.
Seeing results of just isolating the breathing was having these tremendous impacts on my physiology.
Work at a gratitude practice.
What the hell am I doing? Can I really do this? Is this really worth it?
90+% of the decisions that we make today actually stem from fear.
When was I proud of myself today?
I think for me, it's really inspiring people to step out. And you don't have to step all the way out.
Then there are these other moments of magic and joy.
If we can just push into discomfort, we actually find that on the other end, there's a lot of benefit.
What's your purpose?
Nothing starts without a plan. Nothing ever goes to plan.
I think we're going to see a new realm of healing that ultimately wasn't available to us.
If we can bring a practice into our lives that helps us be more vulnerable.
So much of entrepreneurship, I truly believe, to anybody on this call is grit.
I got involved with Wim. I just love the guy. He's just a great human. When people are on the path, they shine.
We so often convert things into flaws as opposed to strengths.
We all deserve to be happy, healthy, and strong.
I'm so thrilled that this content is getting out there, that you guys are promoting bold and vulnerable message and aspirations for people, because I hope that we can all really live that every day.
Hey, this is Jessica.
I'm Svetlana, and you're listening to the Bold and Vulnerable podcast,
Where we aim to inspire others to live authentically through sharing the bold and vulnerable stories of peak performers across a variety of industries. Today we have a special guest, Bishop Reid, who after quitting her corporate job, moved to Brazil to take a deep dive into the personal development world. From positive psychology, mindfulness mental health study, to ancient Eastern philosophy, all in an attempt to better understand her messy and outrageously beautiful story of being human. Her journey took a slight turn when she found out she had cancer. We dived deep into her process of healing through esoteric and transformational forms of wellness, including her 5 experiences with ayahuasca. So welcome, Bishop, to the show, and we're going to dive right in. I want to start by asking you about your mindset when you decided that you were not living your purpose and you decided to leave the corporate world and go on this journey on a whim, really, to South America to live in Brazil. So let's start there and figure out kind of what led you to making that decision and what led you to this journey of finding your purpose.
Well, first of all, my mindset, I was terrified. I don't think I've ever been so terrified in my entire life. Leaving that my corporate job was really different and very out of the norm for me. I basically had no plan, which I'm not suggesting is the way to go at all, but I had no plan, no really, a lot of people when they leave things like that in their life, they have this, master plan to go start this business they've dreamed of their entire life, or they're super miserable with the job that they're in, and that wasn't the case for me. I was really actually quite content and really enjoyed my job, really enjoyed my life. But I think what hit me was actually what kind of changed everything was going on this women's retreat in Costa Rica. And when I went on this retreat, I was around women that were just so inspiring to me. And when I say inspiring, I mean, starting their own businesses, speaking, and just had this kind of energy about them that I hadn't been around in a really long time. And so I think that's what kind of sparked this fire in me of what is the difference between these women, getting to travel around and doing what they love and helping people and working for themselves, being their own boss. And what's the difference in these women and me? And the answer was they just don't waste time doing things that don't absolutely light them up. And I think after that, it was a series of me reading a ton of books, listening to a ton of podcasts to help me make my decision to leave this life that I had started out on.
You decided to pick up and leave because of this inspiration that you had.
Yeah.
Why Brazil? Why was that the place? How did you hear about it, and what drew you to that area of the world?
Okay, yeah. So that was not a plan at all. So as I said, Sears, when I left, I kind of had this idea of, okay, I'm not exactly sure what I want to do, but I know this isn't it. But I have to make a move to kind of really to scare myself in a way, like to get myself out of my comfort zone. So when I made that move, I was planning on maybe doing a little bit of traveling. I never really traveled a ton in college or growing up, so I was kind of putting that off. And when as I was planning my travels, the woman that led the women's retreat, we had become really close friends. She called me up and she was like, "Hey, I'm writing a book, and I know you just quit your job, and I'd love your help." Like literally, this is the week of when I left and planning my travels, and he's like, "Why don't I fly you down to Miami, and when you can help me write this book and help me out a little bit." And I was like, "Okay, sure." So that week, I first of all, I did a lot of cleaning, like a lot of cleaning out my drawers and all this stuff. Like massive purge happens when you're also trying to like shift your whole being somehow. So I was doing a lot of cleaning out and flew down there to Miami and was helping her. She was her name's Emily, and she was this, lifestyle entrepreneur, had this amazing blog and basically a women empowerment social media influencer. Basically ended up moving to Miami and kind of helping her grow her brand and do some business development. And so that ended up turning into me finding this program. After a couple months of helping her out, she was kind of going in a different direction, and so I ended up finding this program through another woman I had met on this retreat, and it was on this magical island, as it was marketed, and on this magical tropical island called Florianopolis, Brazil. And that is what got me to Brazil. I had it nowhere on my radar at all. I was just looking at Europe and Asia and not looking at South America in the slightest. And yeah, that's what brought me down to Brazil. It was this program called Exosphere, and it was this technology entrepreneurship program. And I was just I was looking for something different. I had intended to set out and travel, but I had kind of gotten into this social media, helping her out with her brand and business development. It really introduced me to this world of influencers. And as exciting as that was, I just saw everyone doing the same thing. And I guess, going from corporate to going to all the social media stuff, I just wanted something different and something completely out of my zone. So I went to this technology program on this island in Brazil, and that is how I got to Brazil.
So what would you say that you received that was super different once you got there?
So
as opposed to everything else,
Yeah. I would say that if anyone listening has ever traveled outside of the United States, it is just, I don't care where you go, it's just a different lifestyle, whether it's South America, Europe. There's something about the US, and it's amazing, but it's also it's just different, to where when I was in Brazil, especially on this island, everything's slower, and no one's, really I guess this is maybe my projection on things. I'm sure people are stressed out in other places too, right? But the whole lifestyle is just slower. And it was really the first time in my life that I had just stopped. I had always been going for that next thing, from, high school to internships to college to that next job, to that next internship, to that next promotion. And this was really the first time in my life that I just stopped. And I didn't really even stop. That wasn't until several months later. But it was kind of a glimpse of just stopping to just maybe not do something because I was supposed to do it. And I think that contributed a lot to not only what South America brought to me, but what I brought to my experience. This curiosity of what would it be like if I just stopped? It's this thing that I'm doing. It's not to make money. It's not to get seen and to meet the who's who. It's just to explore. And I think that's kind of what that brought me and why it was so different. Because also I was in just a completely different place of my life. So yeah, on top of this place and this island in Brazil, it was just, as I said, a lot slower. People are so kind. You can find kind people everywhere, but I found particularly on this island, just so friendly. Like, you meeting somebody in the market and it's like they've known you all their life. So that's what I would say maybe about it. Lots of meat too. Oh my gosh, so much meat. And it's funny, I had, right before I went to this island and traveled to Brazil, I had watched the documentary What the Health. And I had been so turned off by meat and anything in the dairy industry. And, I had watched documentaries before, but never like this one. It had like really sunk and like gotten into me. So it's funny because Brazilians love their meat. Like everywhere you go, meat buffets, meat everywhere. So that was also presenting its challenges, but it was an incredible experience.
So a few things, because you hit on a couple topics that I want to dive into, but what did you learn about yourself when you first got there? And you mentioned the culture being so different. So what were those tough lessons that you learned about yourself?
So it's a great question. When I first got there, I was very much in kind of tourist, I'm traveling. I was still super pleased with myself that I actually was traveling. And I think it didn't really, like the big self-learnings didn't really start hitting until after the 6-week program ended. And I had run into this place where I spent the last year and a half called Rosemary Dream. And Rosemary Dream is an empowerment center also on Florianopolis, and acts as a hostel in the high season. So people all around the world coming in and out. And in the low season, they have 30-day empowerment programs. So their main program is called Heart Attack. And that is where things started to change for me, where, I was really meeting people intentionally, like just traveling, because in this program I had gone to, everyone was going to learn and to, this program was a lot of very, very, very smart people, learning artificial intelligence, blockchain technologies, all this different stuff. But when I got to Rosemary, it was this place of people were intentionally coming to this place. Not always, but I found a majority. This place really attracted people that were wanting to find out more, not just about themselves, but about what their place was in life. And these learnings, I don't know, it's hard to say because these learnings I feel like they're just hitting me, being back in the US. I'm just starting to see how much I actually did learn. It's not like I got there and, realized all these things. It was this process of being over there that I started to observe little patterns within myself that I was so blind to, being in the day-to-day of my life back in the States, little things. And I really see the how easy it is to fall into these patterns when you're not out of your day-to-day environment. So, wow. I mean, yeah, I had so many realizations about these little things I noticed about myself, all these little blind spots of, beliefs and stories, mainly stories that I had told myself about myself and my life for my entire life. And not that they were bad, but just stories that I took to be as my truth. And I think that is the biggest thing being down there, is that I was able to take myself out of my environment and really become an observer of my life, where I had been so in it that I was taking everything I was experiencing as the truth. And I think being down there really allowed me to notice. And, that's what obviously like meditation is all about, like noticing what's going on and what's happening. But I think there's a big difference in, reading that stuff and being like, oh, okay, yeah. And then really experiencing it. And I think that's what Brazil and Rosemary really brought me, was this ability to create a space for me to observe what I'm actually experiencing, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. What were some of those stories, if you don't mind sharing?
Yeah, definitely. So I think that a big part of it was this story of me having to fill out this kind of role that I had always thought that was just the life I was supposed to be living. Go to school, get good grades, go have a. And I mean, I feel like this is for a majority of Americans, but go to school, get good grades, and meet the right people, get the job, make a lot of money, and be extremely successful. And not just that, but I always felt also like, I'm going to make this massive difference. And I always had these like super high expectations for myself. And this person that I was supposed to be. And I think that I definitely still have high expectations of myself and this person I am supposed to be, or I want to be. But I think it's shifted a bit in the sense that, I don't really think I understood why I wanted that. I was very disconnected from my why I wanted that. It was very much these beliefs and this lifestyle that I feel, was coming in from the outside, right? So lots of things that were coming in, whether it's media or the friends that you're around, what your family wants for you. You're like, okay, yeah, that's what I want. But it wasn't until this last, year and a half that it came, the things I wanted more came from an internal motivation. If that makes sense.
What shifted that? I'm curious.
What shifted my internal motivation?
Yeah, because you said you never really knew why, and that's so common for so many people. I feel like we've all experienced that to some level, some degree. But what shifted that for you? Was there an awakening that happened? I mean, it doesn't have to be huge. Was it small?
I think many little awakenings, right? Little moments that kind of gave me clues. So I think when I first got to Rosemary, and back to what you said, Sears, about one of the things I was telling myself is this like lack of confidence that I had in my abilities, and not like from a professional standpoint, but more just like my value and like what I had to offer to people. And I felt like it really all came down to that. And that, one story I was telling myself was this, okay, I had studied marketing. I was in sales. But, obviously I wasn't the person, and I don't think I had a chance in my life yet to be the person. But that's also a story. That's interesting. Now I start to catch myself when I'm projecting things, but it's so true. Like I felt like I had always seen myself as the person behind the scenes, and that's the role I was supposed to be. I'm going to studying marketing. I'm going to help entrepreneurs, grow their business and do this and get behind, you know, when I had worked with that social media influencer and helping her start her brand. And I didn't have it came down to me just not having the confidence in myself and really being able to see my value. And so, Svetlana, back to what you were saying about this shift and lots of different moments. But I think one big thing were these little moments where I had the opportunity to give. And that is so, so big for me, because obviously in everyday life back in the States, you know, I definitely gave here and there, but that was never it was never the focus, right? I had my job and school and all this stuff beforehand, but where my main role, and I had no other concerns, no other worries. You know, this place I was at, we were being cooked for, and you know, we had community. It was the community of like 25 to 30 people at any given point. And so we were always being cooked for, and you know, I didn't have to worry about money because I was staying there in exchange, volunteering in the beginning, and everything was just kind of taken care of. So it was this a little bit like, okay, so what is there to worry about, or what do you actually want when you don't have the day-to-day worries that you're typically stressing about or occupied with, you know, family, friends, social life, money, food. You know, I didn't realize I had spent a majority of my life planning out my meals until they were planned for me. And I'm like, okay, so what's left? You know, what's left when all this is taken care of? And some of these shifts ended up happening when I found myself giving to people in a way that, you know, in workshops, because this empowerment center was very about, okay, if everyone who has something to share it, you know, whatever it is, everyone has a gift. So we would have workshops every day, and then that's when I started asking myself, okay, what do I have to give? What's my workshop, you know? And in the beginning that was tough, because I really feel like, well, I could teach some people about some sales stuff. I don't know. That didn't feel good. And slowly through time being there, I found these little moments that motivated me and brought out this intrinsic motivation. My why came through experience, really giving to people, listening, having conversations, and understanding my value, and that I had like real value in serving others.
It's so true. Everyone has a story to tell. Everyone has a gift to give, and you grow to give. You grow to contribute. And I love that heartfelt kind of value that you just brought to the table, and it came from negative self-speak to now I just heard you kind of catch yourself, and you said, oh, I'm trying to, you know, catch myself when I'm, you know, devaluing my skill set or devaluing what I say about myself. And I think that you've just been on this journey. So thank you for, you know, getting deep and vulnerable with us there. You mentioned something earlier. I wanted to touch on it. Your diet, what that was maybe affected when you moved to Brazil. And I kind of want to go into, because you mentioned you watched some documentaries, and then your diet had shifted a little bit. What do you do now to stay healthy? What are your kind of like, what are your routines in the world of health and wellness in terms of your diet? How did you shift when you were when you moved, and how did you have to shift and maybe eat differently and maybe not? I'm not sure. I just wanted to dive into it.
Yeah. So as I said, when it was kind of ironic when I first went to Brazil, I had just kind of, I wouldn't say stopped altogether eating meat, but I was very much not I was very much trying to avoid it. And it was everywhere there. So yeah, it did. It definitely took some patience in finding things. You know, I would find myself going into buffets, and it's not like a buffet here in the States. Like, you know, at the salad bar is some white iceberg lettuce and maybe some rotten tomatoes. Not everywhere, but in a lot of them. You know, you don't walk into Whole Foods and see all these vegetables and whatnot. So definitely took some adjustments. I will say I was very lucky in the sense when I did find rosemary that they were I think one of the only places that was all vegetarian. Well, that's a lie, pescatarian. They had fish on Fridays from the local fisherman village. But yeah, so it was quite easy in Rosemary to maintain like a healthy diet and lifestyle. But when I wasn't in there, and also I wasn't always there, just I think it's only hard if, and this all goes back to that intrinsic motivation and that why, if it's not strong enough. And, obviously if all of Simon Sinek's stuff about, start with your why, but oh my God, it is everything, because I found myself like in this documentary, and also recently as well, having dealt with my health challenges, I am it's not really a question whether or not, is that steak going to be tempting, or is that, I love cheese, is that going to be tempting? It's more, it's not even a question. It's not like I'm even really tempted. It's just like, no, it's kind of like a no-brainer, because and I think you people that have had health challenges really experience that, because it's not just about, I'm going to try not to do this. It's like these things take on a whole new meaning. And so you make it work. Sometimes it's inconvenient when you're at a restaurant and you have to ask, I know a lot of people, quote unquote, hate being that person that's inconvenient. But I think that's just something, again, another story that we're telling ourselves. I'm being a pastor. I don't want to do this. Like, no, you're the only person that really feels like you're that person. And if the other person is annoyed, then that's okay. That's their stuff. But I think, like I said, just going back, if your why and your reasons are strong enough, then you don't really, there's just no other option.
You'll find a way.
Exactly.
Yeah, totally.
There's a will, there's a way.
So I want to shift gears a little bit, because I have some questions that I'm really curious about.
Yeah.
So I'm really curious about ayahuasca.
Yep.
I've just been like itching to talk about this. So spill the beans. Tell us everything.
Oh, the beans. Okay. So ayahuasca.
Maybe you can start with because I know you've had multiple experiences. Maybe you can start diving into your first experience versus, how it went for you each time that you had an experience, and
Sure.
what that was.
Yeah. And maybe explain to the listeners what is ayahuasca?
Yes. Okay. That's a great question. So ayahuasca, I had heard a little bit about it before Brazil. I had heard that my perspective of it, honestly, was not a good one. When I first got to Brazil, I was pretty judgmental of it and thinking, it's this drug that makes people throw up. Like, what? First of all, I hate throwing up. Like, I would rather be sick for days and have a fever than throw up once. Like that's my relationship with throwing up. I hate it.
I feel you, girl.
It's terrible. So I was like, first of all, not interested, and definitely a little judgmental of it, but also trying to keep an open mind, but had no intention of doing it. And so for those of you that don't know, ayahuasca is it's basically a brew of different plants that grow in the Amazon rainforest. And I can't remember exactly. It's in my blog post. I'm trying to think of what the names are. It's a mix of this something called some cape vine and this other leaf. And what they do, it's used in a lot of indigenous ceremonies in tribes in the Amazon. And people come from all over the world to Brazil specifically for these ceremonies. And so, I would meet a lot of travelers that just had come to experience these ceremonies in the Amazon. I was like, all right, there's got to be something to this, And so basically, it's basically supposed to be this. A lot of actually South Americans do it as families will do it together. Young people will do it together as a kind of like a coming of age for men and women. So it's very traditional. But I think the more awareness and attention it's getting in Western and European European cultures, it's coming to be known as kind of this, almost like this, this complete self-awareness, like really meet yourself experience. And I think, not that I would know, but I think you could relate it kind of to, I don't know, I feel like some people would really disagree with this, but relating it to some other hallucinogenic drugs, I think that some people could get maybe or have said they've gotten a similar effect, like LSD or something like that, where people say they experience oneness and whatnot. So this is all the stuff I had heard. And, they also say that you don't go unless you quote unquote feel called to it. And my very first ceremony, I really try to be as open as I can to everything, because all I know is that I know nothing, right? And we really don't know, especially until we try something. And that's something that was instilled in me very young, always having to try everything on my plate, just a bite, just to say, okay, at least I tried it. And this is something I think more, my first ceremony was more just out of curiosity of, okay, what is this? And is it even going to have an effect? I'm just curious. And so you're supposed to basically, there's a couple different outlooks on it, but you're supposed to really, in terms of like honoring the process, some people fast, but you're basically supposed to stick to a plant-based diet for at least 4 to 5 days out. No drinking, no sex, no drug. No anything. You're just supposed to keep it very clean. And you go, and there's lots of different kinds of ceremonies. But anyways, the first one that I went to was, I wouldn't call it pleasant. And it was definitely, it's a cleansing. I cried a lot, and I wouldn't say it was necessarily sadness either. It was just, people cleanse in a lot of ways, either through purging or, pooping or crying or sweating or whatever. Some people don't do any of that. Everyone's experience is completely different. Everyone's. And so you can't really compare. So yeah, I've done it a couple times, and the first 2 times were, it's funny, they said that Americans, they warned me, they're like, now Americans don't usually get the experience the first time. And I was like, that's ridiculous. And it almost was true. And I also went with a couple of people, and I was with one other American, and she also didn't get really any of the effects the first ceremony, which I find super interesting. I would love to take a deeper dive into the why behind that, probably because we're so in our heads and have such a hard time letting go. But yeah, it was not a pleasant experience my first 2 times, definitely. I don't regret it. Just because it wasn't pleasant doesn't mean it wasn't meaningful. It's basically like a 4 or 5 hour meditation is how I can describe it. So it's very much a personal journey. You're in this room and with everyone, and it's that you kind of set up a comfortable space, and you basically are led by a shaman, and he serves you the medicine, and you basically go on your own personal journey for the next 4 hours. And as I said, it's different for every single person, and all of my experiences were very, very, very different as well. So you could have one experience and then it be completely 100% different the next time. They always say that you are always going to get what you need for that time. And I've found that to be very true in my experience. So yeah, and I think these ceremonies were very much a very, very large part in my experiences the last year and a half, and kind of tying strings together and allowing me to further let go of things that were no longer serving me, So yeah, they're very personal and deep journeys, and, not always showing me things that I, of course, wanted to see, bringing up wouldn't say painful things, but just showing me my blind spots. It really shows you things. As I said, you really meet yourself. I mean, I could talk about this for a very, very long time, but do you have any specific questions about my experiences?
Well, yeah. So you said you did it the first 2 times. It wasn't pleasant. How many times did you do it, and what were the other experiences like?
So I think I've done a total of about 4 or 5 times. 5 times over the course of the year and a half I was down there. And my first 2 times were quite painful in the sense that I really felt like I was experiencing forgive me with as I'm walking you through it, because putting words to these kinds of experiences just doesn't even feel right. Also, it's like I'm trying to find the words, but they don't do them justice. So I'm trying to find the words to say that, it's almost like I was experiencing in these first 2 ceremonies the pain of the entire world. Having images of suffering and like myself taking on that suffering, and showing me the ways that I take on other people's energy, which is very much something that I've done a large part of my life. I'm a huge empath, and I've for a long time let other people's stuff really affect me, and I take it personally. And that's something very, very big that I took back with me from those first 2 experiences, was this, the ability to allow people to keep their own stuff, and you can still be empathetic, and you can still show them love, but you don't have to take it on as your own. And I think if I were to sum up those experiences, it would be that. And then my other experience were really, and again, words, it's like I don't even want to give it words because it doesn't do it justice, but it really was one of the most beautiful experiences that I've ever had, in the sense that, and I don't want to say oneness either, but this is something that really inspired my starting my blog recently, is just being human and understanding humans and myself a bit better, and the human in all of us, and what it means to be whole, and feeling that, and seeing the areas where I'm not whole and where I might be fooling myself and telling myself the story that really isn't serving me. A lot of stuff with attachment, it's showing me areas in my life where I'm holding on too tight, or tight in a way that, again, isn't serving me. Oh man, it's, with family, with friends, with strangers, and we lie to ourselves. We tell ourselves stories, and I mean, I know I keep saying this story bit, but it's so powerful that when you can see what these things that you're telling yourself. And we all lie to ourselves, and so why not tell ourselves a story that serves us? And so I think a lot of these things that I experienced was, the unpleasant, but when it was pleasant, it was absolutely beautiful. Just this feeling of like light, we feel like we all carry around from time to time, like the weight of the world. And I think that's what I was really feeling in those first 2 ceremonies, like the weight of the world. I was choosing to put that on myself. And in the other parts of these ceremonies, it really showed me what life almost could be like if I chose to go about it just a little bit differently, just have a little bit more compassion, a little bit more understanding, just open a little bit more, just become a little less attached to my ego, because that is really what puts on all the pounds in this backpack that we carry around, is our desire and our need to have our ego be acknowledged. And the ego is not a bad thing. It just becomes problematic from time to time when you're not aware of it. And I think that's a big thing also that really showed me my ego when I didn't realize. So yeah, lots of things. And I would, it's not for everyone, definitely, but for me, I had some pretty profound experiences, really changing my perception of a lot of things.
Wow. That's powerful. And I love that you touched on the ego not being a bad thing, because in the spiritual community, there's this misconception of the ego being a bad thing. And I love that you said that, it isn't. We need it. And
Yes.
you can't actually kill the ego.
No, not at all. And it's almost being kinder to it as well. It's not like, oh, it's my ego again. What, like, no, it's more like, how kind can you be to yourself, and how kind can you be to this little inner child that just wants to be recognized and acknowledged, and hey, I'm here. And how often we can acknowledge it. So
I'm curious, this is another, I guess, element to ayahuasca and another question pertaining to it, but so you received all these learnings from these trips. How did you go about implementing them in your life right now, and really, taking it away and sticking to this transformation?
Yeah. So one of the biggest experiences I had was with, I think it was around my 4th ceremony with my body. And I write about it in my blog on my website. And it's called Cancer, God, and Ayahuasca. And this was a very profound experience for me and my body. And I've had some body image issues, as majority of women have, and trouble with my relationship with food, and how to figure it out, especially with all the ways of eating nowadays, and ketogenic and paleo and all this stuff. And so I had an experience with my body in one of these ceremonies, and basically having a conversation with it. And a couple months before, I had been, and this is all getting to your question, your original question, by the way. But I had been diagnosed with thyroid cancer, and had a surgery to remove my thyroid. And so this experience I was having was basically after the surgery, and I just having this conversation, this like coming to terms with my body, and talking to it, and understanding what it had just been through, and not just with the cancer and the surgery, but with everything, how I had always treated it, and what it was telling me about, how to listen to it better. And really that was the answer to everything, to being able to trust myself, and to have more confidence in myself, was to just listen, just be willing to listen to myself. And so I was like, well, how do I know when I'm listening? Like I've said, like in the previous minutes, we lie to ourselves. So like, how can I listen? How can I know what I'm saying is true? And the answer was stillness. Be still. And it's funny because the shaman, actually, before the ceremony had begun, if you start to feel not grounded, or you just, it starts to become too overwhelming for you, repeat inhale as you inhale, and exhale as you exhale. And that was it. And I think that's what a large part meditation, I had been meditating before, but not really, like sporadically, maybe like once or twice a week and that kind of thing. But after this ceremony, I have never taken my meditation practice so seriously, because it's so true that stillness provides the space for you to listen. I mean, you can't listen when you're shoving food down your face and you're so hungry, and how do you know you actually like the food? Like, what does the food taste like? Or you're going around your day to day, and you're super busy, and you're on the phone, and then you're checking your email, and then all this stuff. Like, where is there time to listen to yourself and all that? And I think that one of the biggest things to kind of access some of these feelings that I felt in that I experienced in these ceremonies is meditation. Just a simple, and there's lots of different types of meditation, but one of the ones I like to practice most is Vipassana and insight meditation, because that just enables me to give these thoughts all of the space that they need. And they're almost like all my little kids, like screaming in my mind, like, pick me, like, give me attention. And then meditation, I give it attention and then allow it to pass. And so I think that's probably the biggest way that I try to keep connected with myself, even in the United States of America.
I want to get back to meditation, but you nonchalantly brushed over the fact that you were diagnosed with cancer, and you had to have your thyroid removed. So I want to know 3 things. 1, how did you realize that there was something wrong? What was going on in your life that you realized that something wasn't right? And where were you and when were you? The second thing is, once you found out, what was the first thing that went through your mind? And then the third thing being, how is it affecting your life still now to this day, if it is at all?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so first question was kind of the situation, how I found out. So I was really lucky. I feel super lucky, actually, through all of this. And that I had just decided to, out of the last year and a half, I only came back to the States, I think, about 3 times. And one of them was to come to my best friend's wedding. It's something you can't miss, right? Like, this is like childhood best friend. I'm going to come definitely wherever I am in the world. So I came, and I brought a friend with me, actually, and we were sitting at dinner with my mom and her friend. And they're both nurses. And so we're sitting at dinner having pad thai, and she looks across the table and asks me what that lump is on my throat. And my mom was even like, what are you talking about? And I had not noticed anything. And she comes over and she kind of feels this lump on my throat. And she's like, let's get that checked out before you guys go back to Brazil in a couple weeks. So that is how I found out about my thyroid cancer, which is actually the same exact way. I don't know if you guys knew this, but Deborah Norville also got diagnosed with thyroid cancer and found out about hers from a viewer on calling in to the channel, the news station, and telling her, hey, you should get that lump on your throat checked out. So crazy, because I didn't have any symptoms. Had a perfectly good thyroid, is what my doctor said, because a lot of people struggle with having either hypo or hyperthyroidism. I mean, a majority of people are on some kind of thyroid medication just to regulate it. My thyroid was fine. It just had a large nodule of cancer on the right side. So, I got the test results back like a week after I got back from Brazil, and it was, we were pretty certain it was going to be just a nodule, because that's very common, but the results didn't really come back looking so great. So that's when we sent the results off to some other place in California, and that's when it came back that was like, actually, this is 99.9% probably cancer. And my mom had literally told me, Bishop, 90% of the time it's a nodule, you're fine. So I was at 10%, and it was cancer. So luckily though, I think I flew back. Oh, okay. So this goes into your second question. So I believe it was like what happened when I found out. And I remember specifically Sears, I was at Rosemary. And it was on Fridays, we always have community building. So for 2 hours, in the 2 to 3 hours in the middle of the day on Fridays, we all do something to work on the land, whether it's planting, gardening, cleaning out something, just all as a community, like working together basically. And that day, I remember it was beautiful, super sunny, and everyone was working in the garden. And my mom called, and that's when I stepped aside and I found out that it was cancer. And I had no idea. I mean, the C word is like, it's it's shocking. So there's lots of different kinds, right? But I had no idea what that meant, and neither did she until we actually were able to understand really what kind it was. And I got my, the full results back, and until they actually did the ultrasound on it, would we really actually know. So in that moment, I remember I got off the phone and I just looked out and at all these people from all over the world working in the garden on this sunny day, blasting with the speakers, and I had a tear just roll down my cheek because I had this overwhelming feeling of gratitude. And it sounds so freaking cheesy, but I will never, ever, ever forget that feeling, because to my knowledge, I was so healthy. I was living such a non-stressful life. I was eating plant-based and I was super happy. And what do you know? I have cancer. And sometimes you can do all of the quote unquote right things, but shit still happens. And you just don't know when things are going to happen. You can't plan for anything, and I think all of that just brought back the kind of the fleetingness of moments, and I just felt so grateful to be in the situation I was, and just for life, like all the little things. It was like experiencing things for the first time again. It's like, I think that's what I really, going fast forwarding to now, I really tried to tap into every single day. I was reading this article the other day about, 2 ways to really appreciate the moment. And there's 2 ways. Number 1 is impermanence. So the death of things, and realizing that, okay, like this too shall pass and this is going to be over soon. So like, let me just appreciate it for what it is. And then the second thing is birth and life, and looking at things like the very first time you saw it. It's like, well, that's why people are addicted to traveling. It's like, it's a new experience, a new place, a new person. And so what if we could look at all the things in our life like that, driving into our drive into work and our conversation with people. And so that's what I really try to bring in with every day. And, I'm not perfect, and I definitely am not always living on this super high on life, appreciative, life, but I definitely tap into it and try my best, because we never, ever, ever know. And I think I got a taste of that when, at my last job, when a coworker of ours had passed away, and he was very young, and same thing. And so, death is our greatest teacher. And not that I experienced death, thank God. So to wrap that story up, it ended up being a non-infiltrating kind of cancer. And it was really large, and really grateful that we caught it, because the fact that I was so young, and, it was really lucky. And now I am, I don't think they consider you cancer free until about 5 years, but basically it's not there. And I have to get checkups every 6 months. But other than that, really all that changed is I just have to take a small little pill every morning to replace my thyroid hormone. And that's basically it. So I feel super lucky, no radiation, no chemo. So I'm very blessed.
Thank you for sharing that story, and being so open and vulnerable with us. Just, I know a lot of people get freaked out about the C word and cancer and all that stuff. And I don't know, I have a friend that taught me, if anything, like something that he told me was, that changed my perspective on it, is that it's not a bad thing. It's the label, the story we give it. And he's like, it's just your body is just speaking to you, telling you something is wrong, or pay attention to this or that, so.
Absolutely. And what I'll say is that the part I left out is, oh my God, if this hadn't happened to me, if this whole cancer situation hadn't happened, I don't know if I would have done what I did next, which was what I promised myself. If I were to ever come back to this place, Rosemary, and come back to Brazil, that I wanted to be directly involved in our empowerment programs. I'd always had this fear of, oh, well, that's not me, that's them. I'll leave to the coaches, I'll market it. But I had this desire of, I can't wait for me to get better or more confident or learn all this stuff. Like, I want to start making a direct impact now. And so that's what led me to start down the facilitating path in these programs. And that's when I learned all about, I took my mindfulness-based stress relief course. And so when I got back after my surgery, I was able to facilitate meditations and mindfulness workshops. And I mean, none of that would have happened if I hadn't had that experience with my health, and then having the confidence to start coaching. And I mean, I would have never, ever 2 years ago said today I'd be considered, have facilitated these experiences and have coached people ever. So it's such a gift.
Did anything about your cancer, any feelings come up during the time that you were taking ayahuasca?
Yes, it did, which is interesting to me because it really wasn't on my mind at all. And I'm saying because it all happened so fast and so seamless, I don't know, especially after it was gone, I was like, oh, okay, it's gone. And I think maybe that's why it came up in that ceremony, because it was like when I had this conversation with my body, it was like screaming at me, like, listen to me, acknowledge me, like begging me to listen. And I was like, wow, I'm so confused. Like, what's going on? I am listening. It's like, no, you're not, and I basically had this experience of it, my body and when I say it, I really don't know what it was, but it was just this something in me that was just saying, you haven't given me any attention. You just had this massive experience. You just had cancer. And I think I often use humor as a way to just deal with situations or make light of things. That's my kind of go-to. And I think I'd been doing that. And I think in this ceremony was really my body telling me, look, this happened to you and you can't just take it out and not ask why. Why did this? And I think I had been avoiding that too, of why this happened to me, because it was frustrating. I didn't know why, I mean, it would be different if the doctor was like, okay, well, you ate this and that didn't agree with your thyroid, so that's why you got cancer. It's not like that. And so I think I just kind of was like, okay, whatever, I'm never going to know why, and it's fine. But, and I still don't know why, but I think there's a power in asking, okay, what it is telling me something, and I don't know exactly what, but let me just listen. And maybe the answer will come, maybe not now, but maybe in the future. And so it was really just this experience in that particular ceremony of, hey, my body's saying, please listen to me and pay attention to me more. And because I'm here to tell you something. You can't just ignore me.
Yeah. My best friend has cancer right now. And when we found out, one of the things that I said to her was, you have a visitor that's there's this bump on your body and it's begging you to pay attention to it. Mm-hmm. It's begging you to give it attention. So yes, it's so true. It is so true. I watched this. Have you guys watched the documentary Heal? Yes.
Wow.
So good.
Incredible. Our bodies are insane.
Okay, so you've talked a lot about your ayahuasca experience and your learnings and how you've integrated all of that, and you've lived in this really cool place, like in the jungle, basically, for a while. What made you decide that you wanted to come back to the States?
Yeah, so it was definitely a decision similar to the one that I made to stay down in Brazil originally, which was I had a flight booked fully and intending to go back, until I kind of had this feeling, when you just have those kind of gut feelings deep down where you're like, all right, something's got to change, or something's nudging you to go in a certain direction. And we do two things. One, we either listen to it, or we don't. And then maybe we end up listening to it later. And now that time just wasn't the right time for us. But for me, I kind of had this feeling of, I was really torn whether I should go back or not. And for more than one reason. But I think the biggest thing is that, I was supposed to come back, just a little background. I was supposed to come back to the States just for a month for some follow-up doctor's appointments and to see, obviously, family, and then to head back. And I don't think I realized I had been down there for about 10 months, I think, and that was the longest in total, a year and a half, but 10 months was the longest kind of stint I had been down there without leaving. And I don't think I realized what an impact it had had on me being so disconnected from society and from everything that was going on back here. And I'm so glad I was disconnected, because I had that space to reconnect to what was important. But I think being so disconnected, I felt coming back, it was really a shock for me, like living in a community and in this small fisherman village for 10 months, and then coming back into, walking into Whole Foods and Starbucks and seeing everyone, just carrying on with their day-to-day life. I really found myself asking and questioning, where was my place in this world? Like where did I fit in? And then I started kind of tuning back into things like the news that, my dad watches the news 24/7. And so it's always on in the background when I was at his house, just tuning into little things. A good friend of mine's parents were watching this documentary. I can't remember what it was called, Fahrenheit 11/9. And I don't know if you guys have seen it, the Michael Moore documentary. And anyways, I was just tuning into things, basically, is what my point is. And after a long time of not being tuned into things. And what I started realizing is like, it actually gave me this like physical sensation of like disgust, like nausea, and this like, what is going on? And tuning back in, and politics actually used to be a really big part of my life, living just outside of DC while I was in high school, and then right after high school, and having several internships in DC. And I found myself really turning away from it all. But to answer your question, after a couple weeks of being back, in reconnecting with everything, I really found myself wanting to reconnect, and in a different way. And instead of in the past turning away from these things that really turned my stomach, i.e. politics and certain relationships and family, and that were challenging, and instead of turning away and, going to my island that I so loved, I wanted to face these things in a different way, because what I found is that I had a lot more confidence in myself and what I valued, and I didn't have to turn away from these things anymore. I wanted to greet them with a new, what I had learned. And I felt like, gosh, this world, like it needs, not in like this world needs me kind of way, but this world needs me and other people actually participating in this world, like in society, doing what they love, if that makes sense. So I think that was one of the biggest kind of reasons why I decided to come back, because I had this newfound sense of, okay, this is what I love, and this is what's important to me, and it's important now to do it actually where it counts.
Thank you for sharing that. I love how you mentioned that you had this feeling, this gut feeling, and you decided to listen, because I think something that's hard for a lot of people is having some sort of a gut feeling, but then not listening to it, letting other thoughts or other feelings kind of overtake that.
It was definitely super hard to make the decision as well. It's not like, oh, I have this gut feeling, perfect, that means that I should stay. It was several days of me kind of going back and forth, made a pros and cons list. They say to make that pros and cons list and then throw it out. And what I realized after a conversation with a friend was that the one question that to ask yourself that really helps to know when you're making the right decision for you is, where is the decision coming from? Is it out of a place of love or a place of fear? And asking yourself that question can be super revealing, because what I realized is that the decision to go back was more out of a place of fear, in the sense that, okay, I wanted to, get more experience, and I didn't have the confidence, really, I felt, to stay here and start whatever I was going to start. But and that doesn't mean things aren't going to be fearful here. I mean, I was terrified to stay. I didn't know with the plan. I didn't have a plan. I didn't know what I was going to be doing, or how I was going to make money, or whatever. But I felt like, okay, no, the decision to stay was definitely more out of a place of love for me wanting to be back here and share what I had to share.
I love that. I love how you said, are you making a decision out of fear or out of love? I feel like that's such a big one, at least for me personally. Being able to navigate and understand like what that gut feeling is too.
Mm-hmm.
Is that gut feeling coming from a place of fear, or is it that, nudge from spirit, source, whatever, right, you believe in, that's lovingly guiding you where you need to go next?
Definitely. And that also, that you can't skip the practice. So everything that I had learned, was I was in this ideal environment, and coming back to the States made me realize these are the challenges. This is where the practice lies, of the facing these things that, certain family members or certain situations and political conversations, like, it's not, having this perfect setup and, doing all the studying and reading the books and being like, I get it. No, where it really sinks in is when you actually are experiencing these challenging situations and practicing what you learned. And so there's power in the practice, and you can't skip it.
Yeah, I think it's Brene Brown who says you can choose courage or you can choose comfort, but you cannot have them. And I think that you were in that comfort zone. You like you mentioned earlier, you had meals, you had a place to stay. It was a very secluded place. You had your daily practices, and it seemed like an oasis, which is lovely. And you really, I appreciate that you immersed yourself in that practice, because I think a lot of people that try to get that experience that you lived for 10 months, straight, get that experience for retreats, which is like a 7-day, a 10-day, or maybe like at most like, a 30-day thing. And then they go back to their lives of chaos. And I think that you chose the path of immersion, and I really do appreciate that. But I also appreciate that once you got into that place of comfort, you said, no, I need to pull myself back out, because if I'm not growing, then I'm not contributing, and I need to get out of my comfort zone here. So I think that that's so courageous. And I know that you and I have talked about kind of this scarcity versus abundance mindset in the past. Can you kind of go into that for us, and maybe how that aided in your decision?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like I had started to, especially when I was questioning myself whether I should come back or not, I was really looking at the situation from a scarcity mindset of, oh, it's this beautiful place, and it is, and I was having these incredible experiences, and where else can I get the experience to help people from all over the world go through these intense personal development experiences for 30 days and all of that, and how else am I going to practice my facilitation and coaching and all this? And what I realized is, like, that is such a scarcity mindset. And that, as special as Rosemary is, it's not the only place, and it's not the only place where I can help people. I started seeing it as, oh, but this is it. And there's nothing, I don't think, in life where it's like, this is it, whether it's a relationship, in a person or a situation or a career. There isn't this, like, at least I don't feel in my experience is that there's this, like, this was meant to be this one thing. There's so much out there. There's so many causes and there's so many opportunities and experiences. And that's what led me to Rosemary in the first place, was this abundance mindset of like, there's so much out there. Let me see what's out there, And I think sometimes we attach ourselves to things because we love them so much and they've served us so much. But inevitably, maybe we outgrow it for the time, but sometimes perhaps we attach onto it a bit too long because we fear that maybe there isn't something else out there like what we have now.
So that being said too, you're in this abundance mindset being back in the United States. What are you working on now? What are you doing to kind of reach out to your crowd and your tribe and kind of restart your life here?
Yeah. So when I got back, when I decided to stay, thankfully, after questioning myself a lot, I was very much in this abundance mindset of, okay, there's so much out there. So I just started reaching out to a lot of people, just basically offering up what I had, okay, this is the experience I've had over the last year and a half. I was terrified mainly because I was getting all this feedback, mainly from my parents of, okay, you haven't been in the actual job, quote unquote job market in, almost 2 years now. Nobody's going to hire you. Expect to not to get what you want and all this stuff. And I was scared, I didn't know who would value it. And so I was just doing a lot of reaching out and a lot of just conversations, connecting with people I knew, friends of friends. And all of a sudden, just things started coming up the most random things that I never, ever would have expected. So now I'm doing a little bit of freelancing and doing some content writing for some different, actually business coaches. And one is an executive coach based out of California, and I'm doing some content writing for him. They're launching an online program here soon. And so doing some of that, using some of my prior marketing skills, and also getting to see what exactly goes into this, not just business coaching, but business coaching with a twist of kind of this personal development coaching. And that's really what I wanted to see. My biggest fear was that coming back here, I would kind of lose myself in, whether it was, following this career path I was supposed to follow. But I really, really wanted to be certain that I was following in line with the things that I wanted to contribute myself towards. And so I just kept putting that out there, and it really was coming back and way more than I ever thought it would. So that's what I'm doing right now. Just some freelancing and just kind of, also on the side, developing my blog and my website and just creating.
We can cut this out if you don't want to answer, because it just came to my mind and I wanted to just ask. But you mentioned earlier that that you felt like you were kind of putting yourself in a self-speak standpoint in the background all the time. And so I'm kind of seeing that you're putting yourself behind another organization or behind organizations, but you're kind of taking this baby, sticking your toe into the water with getting out there and doing your blog. What are your aspirations for kind of getting yourself to a point where you're like, I am the person, I'm the one?
Yeah, absolutely. That's such a good observation.
Not to challenge you on this on this live recording, but I just wanted to see if you had plans for it, and not to knock what you're doing. I think what you're doing is amazing, and of course, people need money. We're when you move from country to another country and you're coming back home and you're dealing with health, finances, things like that. Like, of course, you need to make money, but I was just kind of curious as to what your mindset was there.
Thank you for challenging me, and I love it. And you're right, definitely. And I've noticed that about myself too, is I want to make sure that while I am still using certain skill sets, is that I am pushing myself. And so I have in my current opportunities, actually on the side of not just helping out with marketing, making it very, even though it still makes me uncomfortable, making it known that I have the skill set with whether it's mindfulness facilitating, wanting to facilitate experiences with clients, so I think also putting it out as much as I don't want to at times, but saying, hey, I can help you with marketing and I will, but I also have an interest and experience actually hands-on facilitating experiences, and I'm very much interested in being a part of your experience with your clients. And that's been very well received also, and more than I thought it would, because you get in this place of this imposter syndrome where you question yourself and you're like, I'm not ready, and who am I to do that, and who am I to tell somebody how to live their life and coach somebody in business, and I think it really starts with just sharing what you have right now and learning along the way. And that's really what I'm trying to do, is just to keep putting it out there and seeing what comes of that. But thank you for challenging me. And that's a great question, because I definitely still struggle with it. Definitely.
You're welcome.
Well, we're human. It's the humanness
yes.
in us. And it reminds me of that quote, right? Where you can be a work in progress and still help other people.
Definitely.
It's obviously been a transition, right? You're going from this peaceful, secluded area in the jungle, and now you're back in Western society. What's helped you navigate that day to day?
Yeah. Well, in addition to making sure I have a meditation practice, I think something really big I discovered from a friend that I met down in Brazil was something called ACT, which stands for Acceptance Commitment Therapy. And it's basically like mindfulness, but more scientifically explained. And what it is, it really, like I was talking about kind of with ayahuasca and evaluating your stories, what ACT has really helped me realize that you kind of take a step back and have this different perspective on your thoughts. And it's not really the thought that is the problem. It's more your relationship with your thoughts. And so taking I'm studying one of the books right now. It's called Act Made Simple. And it really helps take this idea of, mindfulness and meditation and puts it into kind of like a step-by-step process, and really helps, at least my mind, more from a psychology perspective, understand what it entails and specific things. It's definitely more in the mind. And I know a lot of mindfulness is ironically getting out of your mind and more into your body, but it's really helped me understand on a more fundamental level the power of your mind. And so being back in the States and navigating these experiences, it would be very easy for me to tell myself and get caught up in my thoughts on okay, well, what are you doing now? Well, you should be back there, and this was perfect, and and this is better for you, and all this stuff, and just getting caught up. But what ACT has showed me is that it's not about those thoughts. I'm allowed to have uncomfortable thoughts about what I'm doing being back and the challenges, and is this the right decision in that? But it's more of the relationship that I have with those thoughts. So just having a different relationship with my mind and the thoughts and the feelings that come with them, I think has been a big impact, and not judging when I do have uncomfortable and terrible thoughts. A lot of the times in Buddhism, they call it the second arrow. And, the second arrow is for that. There's the first arrow, the pain of the initial thought of, I feel depressed today, and so that's the first pain, and that's the first arrow. And then the second arrow is I don't like that I feel depressed today. I thought I already took care of this. And so that's the second arrow of we're layering our feelings. And so that's a lot of what I've caught myself doing, of this, what, Bishop, we've already been over this. Why are you feeling like this again? This is, that kind of self-talk. And so always asking myself, I find that, and I say asking myself a lot, because I think that's really powerful, and asking ourselves better questions. And so I think having little check-in questions make all of the difference. Little questions to know where you're at and how you're doing. And the question of, is this thought really serving me? And and so that's what's really helped me a lot, is just understanding what my relationship is with the thoughts that I'm having, and then it's okay to have them.
So maybe let's shift back to, you were talking about kind of life hacks to quiet yourself and get your thoughts together. And you mentioned 2 forms of meditation. So I wanted to maybe dive into those, and what are those 2 forms of meditation, and why were you drawn to them, and how do they really help you settle your mind and get past some of those stories?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the two big types of meditation that I like to practice is the insight meditation, and then also TM, transcendental meditation. Now, transcendental meditation, I think a majority of people would know as like the mantra meditation. You repeat something over and over again, and I really like this in certain situations. But the one I usually for majority practice is insight. And insight is, I think, majority of people, I would say, know probably the most about, and it's simply using your breath as a focal point, allowing your mind to do what it does, and bringing yourself back with some kind of anchor, usually the breath. And how I do this, I meditate every morning. It's the first thing I do when I get up. And it's funny because I'm different. I mean, we're different every morning, we're having different thoughts, different things going on in our mind and whatnot. But having a meditation spot wherever you are, if you're traveling or whatever, it's almost this like comfort and like, setting aside that time you can do anywhere. It's not dependent on anything or anyone. And there's such like a kind of a relief in that. You can sit down, you can focus on your breath, and it's definitely not always easy. Some mornings I'm sitting on my mat on my meditation, and I am feeling not busy and super peaceful and smiling and able to just be with my breath and allowing myself not to really hook onto my thoughts. And then other mornings I am super caught up in my mind, following the train of all these things that I'm telling myself, and don't even notice until, I usually practice anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes, depending on the morning. And sometimes I'll go the whole 30 minutes and be like, well, dang, I completely was lost in my mind. But, as I said in some of my workshops, when I would help give some of the mindfulness introductions, is there's no such thing as a good or a bad meditation. And if you find yourself even for 10 minutes meditating and fully on a train of your thoughts, forgetting completely about your breath, and then ending the meditation and being like, oh wow, I just completely thought about my to-do list and what I was going to get at the grocery store that whole 10 minutes, dang, it's not about that. Like that was it. That's what your meditation was supposed to be. If you just catch yourself once, like that's okay. That's your meditation for that day. And that's what I love. The practice, it's not about judging yourself, or you're just there for yourself, basically, however you are.
Do you use some sort of a recording or anything to aid in your practice, music, anything that you utilize in terms of tools?
Yeah, so I usually use Insight Timer. It's my favorite. It's free, first of all, and they have lots of really good guided meditations, non-guided ones. Sometimes I use the timer. Just don't listen to anything, especially when, like right now, I'm at my house up in the mountains in North Carolina, and it's so peaceful, so beautiful, and the birds are chirping in the morning. And so, sometimes I just use a timer, and it ends with a bell. And other times I'll use a guided one. I really, really love Tara Brach. I just really resonate with her style of guiding meditations. She has a really good one called Letting Life Live Through You. And it's like 17 minutes long, and I've listened to that one maybe 150 times. It's so good. And sometimes I have a little meditation playlist. It's about 5 songs, and it's called From Night to Morning. And sometimes I just listen to that too. And it's really whatever I'm feeling, a mix.
What would you say for people that are maybe scared to start, or because I know that you've led workshops on this when you were at Rosemary and and maybe with other folks that you've helped. What would you say to somebody that's, I don't know where to start? What would you say to those people?
I would say, even if it's not meditation, because I would never want to force anything on anyone that isn't open to it, you know? But I would say, even if it's not meditation, at least find something where you can give yourself space to listen and to just stop. You know, you deserve that, to just slow down and stop. And I'm not going to go on spitting out a lot of the scientific facts on meditation and all the ways that like of how amazing it is for you, because that alone is like, okay, I might as well try it. But yeah, like I feel like once you experience, you know, you can't just stop, you know, have a vacation and consider that stopping once a year. Like, you need to stop. We as human beings need to stop every single day, hopefully multiple times a day, but at least something in your daily routine that allows you to stop and to just listen, because you deserve that.
So maybe for the listeners who are scared to try meditation, or maybe haven't meditated or don't know how to meditate, reach out to Bishop if you need anything. But maybe just taking her advice here and now and starting with maybe even just 2 minutes each morning, 2 minutes at night, you know, starting with the most simple thing that you can, 2 minutes in the morning, 2 minutes at night, and just close your eyes and breathe. And that's it. That's really all it is. And then, you know, as you gain trust in yourself, then, you know, it will start to flow. And I think that that's such a great lesson. And I love that you meditate. And kind of piggybacking off of that, you mentioned that you do it in the morning. Do you have a specific morning routine that you go through right now?
So yeah, my routine has been a bit off because I have been really bouncing around from place to place. So I'm trying to find kind of my routine now, but it's funny because since I have been so used to a routine, I'm noticing quite a bit that I don't have one. It's really affecting me. But so yeah, what I try to do in the morning is wake up and meditate for about anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes. Well, first I make my tea, and then I meditate with my hot tea outside, and then I like to do something active, whether it's yoga, a little flow, or whether it's going on a walk, a jog, just anything like 20 minutes to an hour just to get me kind of moving. And then I write in my 5-minute journal. And the 5-minute journal, for those of you who haven't heard of it, it's incredible. I think it comes from Tim Ferriss, right?
No, but he advertised it.
Okay.
I forgot the name. It's amazing. I have like 3 full jam-packed 5-minute journals.
They're so good. They're just so convenient. And it sets you in that mindset of you know, noticing the good. Gratitude. Exactly.
Yeah. We have to link their stuff. Jess, we should reach out to them. They're so great. Man, they also have a planner too. That's really cool. I used to use it.
Yeah. I mean, just journaling in general, I think that's another thing like meditation that maybe some people are scared of because they're scared of what they might learn about themselves. Or there's that fear of, oh my gosh, if I write this down on paper, then it's real. And then I actually have to face it. And so I think that that's another really good life hack where it's just 5 minutes. It's not sitting down and writing pages and pages and pages in a journal, which is what a lot of people think when they hear journaling.
Yeah.
So I think it's nice to hear that there are these little hacks to get things out. Because if we bottle all of this stuff up internally, then I mean, you go crazy, right?
Yeah,
we can get it out.
absolutely. I think the best hacks are the ones you actually do, the ones that you can, and that's why they're hacks, because you actually do them, and they're short, and there's something that fits into your routine. It's sometimes I feel like the morning routine thing, it gets so overwhelming because people want to have that perfect routine. And, next thing you know, you're spending 3.5 hours and it's like, oh God, this is a lot. So it's just whatever you can make time for and fits into your daily routine is what makes the difference.
It's just so fascinating that you've grown so much and learned so much from Rosemary and from immersing yourself and then being able to take those practices and really implement them into your life. So I do commend you for taking the time to self better. And I think that that's just an inspiration in itself. That's bold in itself. That's vulnerable in itself, is just taking that time to create self betterment in your own life. So thanks for doing that. And thanks for telling us.
Absolutely. And
thank you for
guys.
sharing those tips too. I bet that will be super helpful, and it's definitely something that we can implement as well. I love learning about different little hacks or things that we can do to help improve our lives in general in any way possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
What are you reading right now? What books are you reading? Or what was the last book that you read, and kind of give us a little summary?
Oh, yes. I love this question. So right now I'm reading a book called Loving What Is. Have you guys heard of it?
I have not read that.
Oh my goodness. By Byron Katie is incredible. So that's what I'm reading right now. And it's basically about, it's called The Work. And it's these 4 questions that you ask yourself.
I've read it. I just remembered.
Oh my gosh.
I have it on my computer.
so
is it
so
the one,
good.
Is it true? Is it really? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
Read it.
And I was reading it and I was like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. But when you actually are applying it in your situations, oh my God, it really does work. It's incredible. It's really incredible. Has a lot of wisdom behind it. I was listening actually, because I know it's a pretty old, not too old, but it's not new or anything. But where I found her was on a podcast, on the Super Soul podcast on Oprah's, and Oprah was interviewing her, and the interview was incredible. And I was like, okay, if this interview is this good, then I'm sure the book is life-changing. So that's what I'm reading right now. And actually I'm reading a couple books. I like to kind of read 3 to 4 books at the same time that are all like in different areas. Like one kind of like intense, personal development book, one that's kind of like a story, one that's maybe like a little bit of poetry. So anyways, but that's the book that I'm mainly reading. And then the last book I read was, what's the last book I read? Oh, it was a memoir called Sometimes Brilliant. And that is what I just finished up. And it was about the guy that basically helped cure smallpox. Really, really interesting memoir.
Amazing. I love these. People have not mentioned these yet on the show.
Good.
So
Good.
These are the obscure, the esoteric. That's what I love. Bishop, do you have any last minute thoughts or anything that you want the listeners to know about you, childhood or anything like that? So any last little tidbits or life advice that you want to bestow upon us for this round? And maybe we'll have you on again in the future, but wanted to see if you had any little bit of life tips or advice or any closing remarks or notes that you wanted to give the listeners.
Oh my goodness, I would love to come on again and chat with you guys. This has been so fun. But anything else, I would say, if I were to say one thing, I would say, I feel like maybe some other people have said this in your previous episodes as well, but it's the first thing that comes to mind. And I think it's so important, is just be kind to yourself. Don't take things personally. and, you know, recognize the human in you every single day and in others, because, you know, to start with yourself, you do that with, it just spreads, and you do that with other people. So it just, you know, they say in meditation and asking, instead of, you know, asking, oh, how was that? How did I do? Or was it a good or a bad one? To ask, how kind was I to myself? And not just leaving that in your meditation practice, but taking that off of the mat and the pillow or wherever you meditate, and asking yourself at the end of every day, how kind was I to myself today?
Awesome. Thank you so much. That was wonderful.
Absolutely.
So where can people find you?
Where can people find me?
Yeah, online, you know, your website, just so our listeners, if they're interested in learning more about you, contacting you, they'd have a way of reaching you.
Definitely. Well, I just launched my website and my blog. It's bishopreid.com. I'm really, really excited about it. And so this is where I'll be sharing some of these experiences, ayahuasca and everything in between, and all things being human. It's called Wake Up Human. So that's bishopreid.com. And yeah, and then on Instagram, Facebook, all the social media, just my name, Bishop Reid. Fortunately, there aren't that many of them, so I usually just pop up. Well, thank you guys so much for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Bold and Vulnerable podcast. For more information on today's speaker, please visit us at boldandvulnerablepodcast.com.
And don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. Let's keep spreading the love by being bold and vulnerable. Thank you. We love you.